more time. All right, everyone, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining me today while there's a space launch. So let's talk about a few things. The first thing I want to talk about is first stuff off the top. I want to say thank you for being here. And today we're going to talk about British blues and specifically some sort of stuff that Jimmy Page does. I have a course on this from TrueFire, and this is actually the solo and the background track from that course. So the course is on sale right now for 50% off if you use the link here in the description for the British Blues course. If you want to pick up a copy, it would be great. That's how I make my living, selling these courses and things like that. So it would be half off just for the next few hours if you want to pick it up. So British 50, and you save half on that. Okay, so let's talk about a bunch of stuff here. So the first thing is it's basically a blues, and what the song is based upon, this particular version, or this particular groove, is on the BBC sessions. Zeppelin did a song called "The Girl That I Love's Got the Long Black Wavy Hair." So the BBC sessions are really cool if you don't have them. So I kind of took the idea off of that one, that same kind of groove, and getting that Bonham-esque drum beat, which is obviously the coolest thing in the world. So let me just play some of this here right now. So the riff is okay, now, let's talk about some of those kind of rhythm ideas. And I call this British blues. Really what I mean is rock and roll, but influenced by the British guys. So the British blues rock invasion people who are my favorites, really pretty much, and what I kind of grew up listening to. So certainly Eric Clapton, Peter Green, Jimmy Page, and Jeff Beck. And there's also I love Mick Taylor, especially when he was playing with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. So this riff, this is kind of hard stuff to do. Let's talk about that. This is the stuff that people sell short. You know, you learn the solo and you go, oh, I missed out on the whole solo. So this, on the riff, let me say. So it's an A blues, and I'm playing. Okay, so the first move I want to get off of that is this A, with my G in the bass, and a little bit of that bend. And that's a huge rock and roll move, as we've heard, and you hear Zeppelin do it in rock and roll, and Black Dog and all that. It's a really common thing. So let's check it out. And it's about the right hand. I'm not going all downstrokes. This is all this right hand. So the riff, right, so this thing is running on, and this is what's going to keep it all steady and keep it all together. So a little syncopated. Now we're going to go to the D chord and mess up. So I'm doing the same exact riff, just dropping it towards the floor, one set of strings. Then same move as you do in rock and roll, and that kind of groove, and so I just played a bunch of tunes. That was Neon Nights by Mob Rules by Black Sabbath, and we had You Really Got Me, the Van Halen version, and Magic Bus. So you guys get the idea. So it's a really common thing to play. So now instead of a straight turnaround, what Page does is kind of cool. E, D, C. And it goes. So you can play along with the track, and I don't have a tab for the rhythm guitar part, but I think you guys can sound out what I've figure out what I've done from what I'm showing you here. Now, one of the little moves I threw in there, the old Page, and that's a pretty cool trick. That's I think I first really became aware of it on Cheap Trick in what song was that? You know, Live. You know. Mama, was it, all right, I can't remember. The Cheap Trick tune, you guys know what I'm talking about. And then you hear Zeppelin play, and it's just a common lick, and it's in Over the Hills and Far Away, some kind of idea. So I'm just doing this really pull-off thing from B, A, to open G, F sharp, E, D. And it's a good thing to practice. I'm just doing a downstroke, pull off. And you know, if this stuff's a little sloppy, that's totally fine, because that's sort of the Jimmy Page thing, you know. I don't have my dragon suit for today, unfortunately. I wish I did. All right, so there's the rhythm guitar part. When you play along with it, you want to listen to, like, really locking in. So let me just kind of, I do have the track without the drums. I'll load that up. I forgot to put that in, but check it out. Here's just the track without the guitar. Watch. So listening to that groove. And if someone's singing, cut back, right? Here's my E, the open D, and I'll add in. And the groove, right? So if you notice that whole time, pretty much, even when I was going, right, roll the volume back, I'm still keeping that groove in my hand or my body, so I don't feel like I'm never stopping this. I'm not going, because then I lose it altogether. It doesn't groove if you do that. So you really want to keep the time in your right hand, or at least in your leg, or somewhere moving your head around. Something that's really going to firm that kind of stuff up. Okay, so let's talk about the guitar solo. All right, so some general things that Jimmy Page would do. We're going to look at sort of mixing major and minor pentatonic scales and flirting with the A major pentatonic scale. So let me just I'm going to play the solo one time through, and then I'll break it down so we can do the sections. You have the tab for you and PDF there as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the first lick, A minor pentatonic, super Jimmy Page, Chuck Berry, right? Now let's just talk about this lick. It's a really important lick for you to be able to play smoothly. Jimmy Page plays a lot of repeated licks. You know, a lot of guitar players do. Clapton does as well, especially back in this era of the 60s. But this thing right here, let's talk about what's important about getting that lick together, and that is the way you pick it. I couldn't play it. I mean, I call these like the Freebird Licks, you know. That whole, I'm saying that was terrible. I'm playing two different licks there. All these kind of things. That's what I meant to play. Awesome. All right, so they're really hard to get fast. When I was younger, I'm like, I can't play this thing fast. What is going on? And I realized it was because I wasn't picking it properly. So in this case, I'm going to go down, down, up. All right, down, down, up, down, down, up. That's really important. And it's like a sweepy motion. All right, so the first thing, A minor pentatonic, not that difficult to lick. What's cool about that lick is it can go anywhere. It's sort of like saying, you know, the in guitar. So just getting that lick together under your fingers and repeating it, different positions. Right, so you just have it when you need it. And the repeated licks are really important for a framework and a foundational thing on your guitar vocabulary and your licks. All right, so all right, now, if we think about some of the stuff we talked to, if you've been following the breakdown, the lockdown, I'm going to start outlining the sounds of the chords. And Jimmy Page really knows what he's doing from having been a studio musician. And that was really fun. I didn't know much. I didn't understand what that meant when I was younger. And I heard him speak about music, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And that's really cool when it comes to the production stuff and the parts that he mixed in. So So what we end up doing is have an A7 chord, A, C sharp, E, and G. So we've got this cool lick. And I do repeat the phrase, so I'm doing this bend, A, C sharp, C to C sharp to G. So we get this tritone, which is part of my A7 chord, right? So we're really outlining that A7 chord because it's so important that we want to hear that. And that's to me what sounds really refreshing, and it's a nice contrast. And he does this quite a lot from just the opening straight minor pentatonic, right? Like that ending on that flat 7, have that natural third, which is the C sharp. Like that feels like there's something else coming, right? So if we just hear that lick, I'll play that phrase. Just in the 1 chord. Even slower, right? So even that by itself is a really nice sound on the 1 chord, because we've got the A7, we have the C sharp, it's the third of our chord. If you look at the chord shape as we discussed before in previous lockdowns, just look at the chord shape. There's the note right there. There's the 2 notes right there. I have a C to C sharp, that nice cool. And there's my flat 7, which is my G. It gives me this interval of what we call a tritone. And that's the real definitive sound of a dominant 7th chord. So a nice musical device that you can always use is Motivic Development, or you're repeating a musical idea. So what's nice about that is you're giving some glue to the solo, right? You're connected 2 ideas. So it's just not a bunch of nonsense. You know what I mean? Like that was a concrete idea. And that repeated idea, it just kind of like it glues it together. Motivic development, you repeated a theme. These are important themes for improvisation. I was having this conversation with Rick Beato, and we were talking about improvisers. And he said you can often tell an improviser when they repeat a musical idea or a theme. And I never really thought about that in that sense. And he was completely right. Good improvisers know how to do that, because what you end up doing is you're creating a little bit of a framework that you can play off of, and it just, like I said, brings everything together. Now, a very common sort of Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton move next. I love this fingering, this connecting fingering of A major pentatonic. He switches to A major pentatonic. Now, what's really hip about this is he uses the open string. Well, he doesn't. I do. He didn't do that necessarily. This is not one of his old. This is like a composite of things Jimmy Page does, and sort of Eric Clapton a little bit in there. I got this kind of idea from Clapton. So I have A major pentatonic, which is on my 1 chord. And I'm going to bring up that A, a really common thing in guitar, to double that note. And then what did I do again? I repeated the same exact lick up an octave. So just like the idea, it's the same lick. So what do we see there? Like it gives the solo, once again, continuity. It makes it sort of more melodic. It's more memorable. But as a soloist, it gives me a break, or it gives me the idea of repeating something like that. Gives me some place to go, right? So let's just say I wanted to make the solo longer than this. If I start off with something like this with these repeated ideas, melodic, it's more melodic as opposed to licky, if that makes sense. So, that being said, this is a great lick in A major. Okay, there. Right, so very similar kind of phrase. So here I'm playing. So my notes are C, C sharp, D, C, C sharp. So once again, we're playing A7. And here, this is really indicative of that British blues thing, as opposed to, say, like a Texas blues thing, which is largely based in minor pentatonic. That's a huge generalization. But if you think about like Stevie Ray Vaughan, he didn't use this sound that much. Albert King doesn't use this sound that much. This is a bit more of like hopped up B.B. King in a way. So we have this. Then here we have C, C sharp, D, C, C sharp, A, E. So if you look what's going on there, A7, because we're on A7. What do you know, guys? We're playing A7, right? So A7, A7, A pentatonic. We're playing an A7, A major triad, but we're adding in a flat 3. So we can always add in a flat 3 below our natural third of a dominant 7th chord. Well, what did I do there? So what I would love you to do, and what I try to do when I learn an idea like that, learn it in different positions on a neck. All right. That's kind of cool. Right? That's a great sound. So learn it all across the fingerboard. And that's a really important thing that you should be doing. If you learn a lick in one position, you should be learning it in as many different positions as possible. Now, I mean, there's stuff that's in the guitar that's just guitar. Or something like those open E minor pentatonic licks. They only, if you want to play them in another position, they only really sound kind of right using the open string. So there's that. But something like this. And while we're on it, a cool little Jeff Beck lick, early Jeff Beck lick. He just does this. See how it sounds on this. Nope, that's not the right one. Wrong track. Okay, here we go. Nope, that's the wrong track. Oh, it's the right track. It's gonna play. Check this out. Sounds cool. here, to watch. All right, maybe you wouldn't do it as long as that, but that weird little lick works over all 3 chords, and Jeff Beck does that one a lot. He still does it to this day. So all I'm doing right there is C, C sharp, D. So I can do that, right? Yeah, I got it right. There we go. So I use those same licks just in a different position. All right, so now we go to the 4 chord, the D chord. What does he do? Or what do I do? Very common to what Jimmy would do. Wrong note in there. All right, there's 2 ways to look at this. You go into what we sometimes call BB's box, which is sort of like A major pentatonic up here. But I really like to look at this as, there's a D7 chord. Once again, find your chord in the position and play the chord. It's kind of what he's doing. So the line. So what I have here is my 3rd of my D7 chord to my 5. Right, so I have F sharp to A, and I play this B because it sounds good, you know. It's still an A major pentatonic. It's also in D major pentatonic, which is right here. So we could be seeing that we've gone to D major pentatonic. I used to think more about it that way, but now I think much more about I'm just hitting the chord tones. So I think you should start to maybe see, if you're watching the lockdown and know my courses and stuff, I'm really about the chord tones. I do know that around here is a BB's box. Yeah, is it D major pentatonic? Yes, it's kind of both. But what I'm hearing is D7. So we know this B sounds good because it's from D major pentatonic. We'll look at it that way. And plus it's a 13. It's just a nice note. So there you go. So here's bend. Well, I bend this B to the C, which I'm bending the 6th of the chord to the flat 7. So D7, 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 D7. That E sounds nice to the back to the A. Then kind of fooling around in that position a little bit. Thinking D major pentatonic lick, or outlining my D7 chord. Now, big Jimmy Page kind of idea. I'm going to go up to this thing. All right, so here I'm got my E chord, all right? Then I do D, C, and what I do is I basically outline the sound of those 3 chords. So E7, E, G sharp, B, and D. Here's the lick. So I have my G sharp, E, and B. Then I go to the D, and here, all right, it's a little imperfect. D7 is spelled D, F sharp, A, and C. I'm playing F sharp and C, which is my tritone. That's a super important sound of the chords. Like in rock and roll and a ton of other things. So I add this E in there because it keeps it a nice thread. All right, so here I have, it's like a D9 arpeggio. I'm not technically thinking of it that way. I just see it as, there's my tritone for my D7 chord, the C and the F sharp, and I just really like the sound of that E. And then here I have G, E, and C. Well, my chord is C, C, E, and G. So I play a C major triad. And I ended up. That's the solo. Now, the other thing I didn't touch on just yet is the vibrato, right? You know. Huge part of the sound, that nice, fine-tuned, big vibrato that's really in your face. It makes a huge difference. So, like, you know, there went, but right, and it really. I'll just play a few things, right? Right? So I'm just kind of thinking that vibrato, really nailing it and hitting those pitches. So some thoughts, and I'll answer some questions. And once again, thank you for being here. Sometimes, you know, first of all, sometimes people give Jimmy Page, they give him a hard time for being a little sloppy here and there. They're idiots. You know, I mean, think about, okay, so sometimes he would be a little sloppy on things, but I don't care. What he was going for, besides in the greatest rock and roll, it's my favorite band. If he said, what's your favorite band? It's definitely Led Zeppelin, without a question. And then, I guess Pink Floyd, if you're talking about, like, listening to bands growing up. What I love about them is there's just such a breadth of stuff that they do. You know, there's all sorts of music. There's all different styles. There's blues. I learned my blues playing from Zeppelin. I learned my rock playing. All those sorts of things came from listening to Led Zeppelin. So just love them. And so some people give, you know, Page a hard time for being a little sloppy here and there. I don't care, man. He's just the coolest, right? And he wrote those tunes. And the ideas behind some things that may not have been as well executed as you might like, you know, whatever that means, are brilliant. And then if you think about live stuff, I mean, you know, the guitar, he wore his Les Paul, so there's no way he could play it well, but he looked amazing. So I don't care anymore. And even when I was younger, like, oh, listen to Heartbreaker, it's a little sloppy. And I'm like, that's the most brilliant guitar solo. I remember every note of that. All those things. So a few little Page isms that I really kind of love is, one is we're doing this main riff, that kind of thing, but this, while we're on it, I just love that, man. That is so great. So I'm going to play A, it's in my G note, right? I'm going to bend the G note up to an A, and it matches my chord. And of course, that's in Black Dog. If I played it, the bots would demonetize me, as they might already, because I played something Zeppelin related. And I know Zeppelin's pretty hard on people playing their music on YouTube. But anyway, that's a really great sound. Any key, D. It's a little harder getting bending that A string, keeping the D in tune, but this, you can point, right? That's the coolest part about it. Also, Page very often play full major chords. And then this turnaround, I'm doing like a... You know, you don't often hear that. And sometimes you do it in Whole Lotta Love. He hits that full major chord. Another move that he would do that I really totally ripped off is the bending, playing one note on a string and then bending it on another string. He does that in Four Sticks, and he does it in a Whole Lotta Love. Right? That kind of sound right there. So, all right. 460 does it, the G note on the D string and the open G. That's that cool sound. What I've gotten from Page across the board is just the great songwriting and the groove. That's the thing. The solo is cool, I think, the one I wrote, and it's very similar to the one, like I said, he plays on. Parts of it are similar to what he plays in The Girl That I Love. Has got long black wavy hair from the BBC sessions. It's also just an amalgamation of a bunch of Jimmy Page things. But he always grooves in that main part, right? Right? So it's really physical, and it doesn't sound right unless this is going. And even in a solo, if you watch, I kind of have this motion all the time, so. Even when in between notes, I'm kind of going like this, right? I don't just stop. That is impossible for me to do. And I think if you watch most guitar players, when I change that, there's a break there, right? Then I don't just go boop. I just don't stop. I can't, because it ruins it. So what goes on here is like so. Right? So there's either I'm moving or sometimes this is going. If I have a short break between the two, I might not do this because it might just mess me up getting to my end goal. But the physicality of it is really important. So I would recommend you watch Jimmy Page play. He's got a really interesting right hand. Like he just kind of goes for it, and it's almost like sometimes the left and the right hand don't meet all the time where they were supposed to, but who cares? It's Jimmy Page. And I didn't write Black Dog and Cashmere and Whole Lot of Love, and so all of it is great. Okay, so also Les Paul, I am playing on the bridge pickup. I would sometimes, Page very often use these two. I have the Peter Green thing going on here where I have an out of phase neck pickup. So it does sound different if I were to, than Page. So in other words, the sound I get out of this guitar gets that. That out of phase thing. So by getting that sound, which I really love, that sounds like Peter Green or a bit B.B. King-ish, I give up the Jimmy Page in between on a Les Paul sort of out of phase sound. So what Page would do very often is he would mix the two volumes to get the tone that he wanted. So that's important to check it out. If you have a Les Paul, you can mix those two volumes. I can do it a little bit. Nah. Yeah, you totally sacrifice that thing to get the other thing. So that's why you need two Les Pauls. You can afford it. I can't. All right. So these are throwback SLE 101s. So that's always a question people ask. All right. So let me get to some questions. Thanks for everybody for being here once again, especially during the SpaceX launch, which I'm a space nerd, so I love that stuff. So thank you for everybody for being here. And okay, once again, I think Phil's been so super great. If you want my British Blues course, it is 50% off right now if you just go to that link in the description. Please use that link because that goes to my website. And it's half off. I forget how much that's going to be. And all my other courses are 25% off if you use the Live 25. And that brings me to my Solo Explorer course, which I talked about last week. I'm really happy with that course. I'm very happy with the British Blues course too. And as we go further, we're going to talk more about some British blues stuff. And I have a course coming out with Brett Papa eventually, once we kind of get this back in order, where I go into depth about some Eric Clapton's playing Cirque Cream. But the Solo Explorer is very similar in the way I see things. Talked about it last week, and I've been so thankful I've gotten a lot of nice emails about that course, about how it kind of puts everything together. where you're not thinking modally, which I don't. So I'm thinking about chord tones. I think it's a really nice companion to this. I'm not trying to hawk my stuff. Well, I am, because that's how I make my, okay, I'll be honest. Yeah, that's how I make my living. So if you guys dig what I have here, everybody's so generous to the tip jar and all that. But the courses are really great if you're interested in helping out. Okay, let me get some questions here. And all right, so saying hi to everybody. I've moved my camera, so it's a little. Does it look better? I think it looks a little more in line here. 5 Watt World. Hey Keith, what is going on, man? All right, so Keith, I did. You guys probably know because we talked about it. Keith was generous enough to ask me to. He did a great video on the history of the Blues Breaker, the Beano record, and he asked me, and this is how we met, if I could play a John Mayall and Blues Breakers kind of sounded like track. Excuse me. And I did that for him. And go to 5 Watt World, Keith Williams, great stuff. And that was a ton of fun. And that's another guy we'll talk about. We'll talk about Blues Breaker era Cream versus Clapton versus Cream era Clapton, which is different. He does play differently. Okay. So hello, Dallas. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hello from Miami. Tarcisio, how you doing, man? If I'm pronouncing that wrong. Graham, Nikki O'Neill. Hey, Nikki, what's going on? How you doing? Nikki's got a great TrueFire channel of her own, so you can check her out over the TrueFire. My channel, really seriously, is coming soon. Almost done. We're going to launch that. And what the channel will be is a lot of this kind of stuff, like in-depth looking at how I think about the guitar. Maybe not as much like blues courses or things like that, because I have a lot of those at TrueFire, but it's going to be more about how I think about playing the guitar, and I think you guys will dig it. If you like this, you'll dig it. So Richard and Sarah, Solo Explorer is great. Been digging it for a week. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And I got your email. Thank you. I appreciate your email that you came in. I'm looking at my phone, which is getting text. All right. Okay, so some questions. Just I'm gonna. This is a plugin. It's Universal Audio. It's actually the Shure SL100, which is just a plexi. They have Marshall plugins, but I actually kind of dialed in a better sound out of this just quickly. But that's it. And and it's basically that. That's a 72 super lead. Page would use a super bass. Interesting nerd stuff. The guy who does the work on my amps here in New York also has worked on Jimmy Page's amps, and he rebuilt. Okay, this is a fun story. It's nerdy. I went to his shop. His name is Matt Wells. He does the Stones amps, and everybody in New York knows him. Kind of a New York legend. So I brought that amp in, and I got it at a pawn shop. No, Carmine Street Guitars for $800. It was modded, and I just was, how much? And it was like 800. I'm like, what? Like for a 72 hand-wired super lead. So I'm like, I'll be right back. $800, a lot of money, but not for a 72 super lead. So it needed a fair amount of work. So I brought it to Matt Wells. And when I was at his shop, there was this. Actually, I'm messing up the story. So years earlier, I was at Matt's shop getting one of my amps fixed. And it was old Marshall. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool amp. And he's like, yeah, it's Jimmy Page's. I'm like, what? And he goes, and it used to be Hendrix's amp. So I was like, can I just rub my body on it and see if anything comes out? So Page had some work done on that amp. It was his favorite amp. It's on the one that's on Song Remains the Same as well, the main one. And somebody had done some work on it. He said it never sounded the same. So through some connections, Matt did the work for him on his amp. And he loved it so much he used it at the O2 Arena show. So that's that amp. So that was a while ago when they did that reunion. Long and short is that's the guy who worked on that amp, and it's a super lead, but he kind of tweaked it so it's a bit more super bassy super lead. That amp it's really killer. I can get a really good kind of Zeppelin tone from it. So if you listen to it, I might have a little more gain on it, but if you listen to a lot of Zeppelin, Jimmy Page does not play very distorted at all. So that's something to think about. It's a very super bass sound. Super bass Marshalls don't have as much gain as a super lead. So something to think about when you're playing that. You can really hear the clean guitar through what Jimmy's playing. Okay. All right. Getting the questions? Thanks, everybody, for the compliments. All right. So, okay, well, I'm just saying something. If you already bought one of the courses, I mean, if you go through my website and you use that that code, it should work. I'm finding out that it's working. It's discounted by, okay, I'm finding out that the code, hold on. Somebody's telling me, this is not making a lot of sense. Someone is telling me that since it's already discounted at 37%, that it's not discounted at 50. So I will sort that out and we'll get that going. Hold on a sec. I'm going to do that right now. You guys hold on. People can't use the code as it's already. I'll make sure this works, guys. Hold on. On live. Thanks for hanging in. I love this. This is all live. Okay, cool. All right. We're going to sort that out. Questions, anyone? Everybody's kind of blabbing, talking amongst yourselves, which I really appreciate, which is super cool. Where can I buy Gibson like yours in NYC? Well, I don't think you can buy anything in NYC at the moment, unfortunately. But this is a historic makeover, so it's actually a 2019 59, like an R9, and then it was sent to historic makeovers, and what they do is they completely strip it, and they put a Brazilian fingerboard on it, and they refinish it with the proper dies that they used back in the 50s. They reshape the neck, and they put new binding on, which, feels more like a traditional one. I've had the good fortune of playing many early 57, 58, and 59 Les Pauls. At one point, I was in the room with 5 of them. I got to A, B, C, D, E, them. And there's some of them are great. Not all of them are great. Some of them, they're all really pretty good, but some of them, whatever. I've tried a few that it just didn't do anything for me at all. I was like, this is not worth $350,000, that kind of thing. So I got an opportunity to get one of these, and it's the closest I've found to the real deal, and I can't afford the real deal whatsoever, Okay, they're working on it. TrueFire is working on it. Okay. They said it should override. They're going to get back to me. I love the people at TrueFire. Super fast, but getting back. Okay. All right, your pickups look like they're set pretty low, and we'll yeah, they are. Well, I don't know if you could see. Yeah, I don't like, these aren't even high output pickups, and I don't like high output pickups. So what I do, you want to hear the tone of the guitar? So I just like it where it's not overdriving the amp, it's just a straight old medium output PAF. And if you put them too high, you start pulling on the strings. And so, yeah, it's pretty low. And I just match the output. I set them where they sound right to my ears. And if you've tried some of the old ones, a lot of the times the neck pickup is actually below the pickup ring, which is mine is a little bit as well. Okay. How to combine diminished chords into the blues in different ways. Did Page use diminished chords much? That's a good question. No, as far as I know, Page did not use that much diminished chords in his soloing. You hear it in some of the songs, and like 10 Years Gone, he uses that. Like, I think he goes, yeah, what's the first chord of that section? He goes, oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, yes, right. So there's one that he uses in the song 10 Years Gone, where he just goes to A major, to A diminished 7, E minor 7, D major 7, C major 7. Okay, another thing. I know how to play most Zeppelin tunes. I mean, not all, but I know a lot of them, just because I loved them, but I learned so much about playing guitar from them, especially that riff rock and getting into a groove, like the crunge or something like that. It's really cool. All right. some of them sound a bit Ace Frehley-ish. Did he also use this technique? You know, it's so funny. Like, I was never a Kiss fan, so I would say not that was... and Nicky O'Neill fielded that question perfectly. Yeah. You know, Ace Frehley, all these guys you're talking about like that, everybody was influenced by Zeppelin. Everybody wanted to be in Zeppelin or The Who or, you know, the Stones or something. So I in terms of Guitar Hero-ish, playing a Les Paul, yeah, it's gonna be Jimmy Page. So I think that's probably where Ace Frehley got it from. And some of these are kind of basic. I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, you know, Page created some of these sounds in this genre. So I think it's impossible for a blues rocker, which obviously Kiss is coming from that sort of background, in the 70s to have not been influenced, I think, by Zeppelin. So how do you back to Kit Q GSQ? How do you combine diminished chords into the blues in different ways? Well, not to get too far off the topic, you can use what we call a sharp 4 diminished 7th chord. So, you know, if playing A, my 4 chord, sharp 4 diminished 7. Right, you got that kind of... All right, so you can use a sharp 4 diminished 7th chord, and then you can... That's where I'm going to do I'll do a lockdown on diminished, and I've got courses on it. But a sharp 4 diminished 7 is the most common one in the blues. Okay, so sharp 4 diminished 7. It's really easy to play if you're not sure how to play it. D7, play a D7 chord, and then sharp your root. Just put your second finger down, put a D sharp in the bass, and you got it. So let me see if I heard back from TrueFire. All right. Wait, I'm sorry, there is an issue. If you add it to the cart through my site, the artist link, it will work. Okay, so guys, the link that's there, it goes through my website, and if you could get it through there, what happens is for all TrueFire artists, I see Jason Laughlin's here, all us TrueFire guys, if you purchase our courses through our sites, we get more money from the percentages. TrueFire is the greatest people in the world, as you can see, friends and family, and they're really generous with that. So if we bring in our own traffic, we get paid significantly more for that. So if you use the link here, don't go through TrueFire's website. If you use the link in the cart, or you go to Jeff McErlain, that lessons link, and you click on that, it should be cool. All right, thanks. Bevy, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? All right. Okay, you can click the page you can fix to my homepage. Thank you very much, guys. Sorry for the inconvenience on that. This is from Twanto. Any tips recommended on pacing for someone going through these courses? Skim all the lessons first, perfect them in order, continue to work on several lessons simultaneously. This is a great question. How do you work through a TrueFire course, or any of my courses, or anybody else's? First thing I would do, some of them are tiered, you know, like my blues arpeggio ones. We start off with something simple, and then, sorry, TrueFire, one more time. He just put the link in my chat, so if you want to click on that, Kyler Toman, that's the one. Thank you, Kyler. So the link is in the chat. If you go there, it'll work great, and thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so if it's not a tiered course, like I said, the blues arpeggios starts off simply and goes more difficult. Something like this British blues course, I would just jump to the one you like and then start working on it. And then I would just think about, okay, most TrueFire courses, at least this British blues course, I have a kind of a primer where I talk about this is what is you generally hear in this genre of music. Now, is it what makes it British blues? Rock and roll. It made it rock and roll. That's what makes it British blues. The tone, the aggressive, background, the band, and that kind of stuff. That's what makes it different from American. So the first thing I would do is find the tune you like and start watching the primer section in that, so you can get the idea of the concepts behind it. And I break it down and all that, but then just go solo, like bit by bit. Now, I'm not saying you should perfect every solo before you go on, because perfection, who cares? Really, it's about the ideas and the concept of the licks. So you find the licks, and some of them are going to stick with you and some of them are not. So just get it to a point where you feel confident with it, go on to another one, and continuously go back and revisit it so you kind of get those licks and those ideas under your fingers. But I wouldn't worry too much about perfecting them. The only thing you have to be careful of, and this is the true with a lot of things like places like TrueFire and all these sorts of things, is sometimes there's too much information, right? There's like, oh my God, I go on here and you got all these great courses and you got all the ones that I have, like 34 courses or something like that, and all these great courses. And you start to go, oh, look over here, look over, and you go on YouTube and watch these things. You got to cut all that out. You got to just make a choice and work on one thing at one time, because that's going to inform all the other stuff. So if you work on this solo, well, what did we do? We outlined the 1, the 4. We didn't, and the blues did some of the 5 on that little, this part. We did that. But we just saw ways to navigate around outlining the 1 chord and the 4 chord in a traditional rock and roll blues kind of way. That's huge, because the next time you go to something else to work on it, you're going to start to hear those sounds and say, all right, I know what that is. And that's cool. Think about that. Like if you're listening to something like, is that a major pentatonic? What's he doing? Do I hear the 3rd? Do I hear the 7th? Start to try to internalize these ideas that you've learned when you're listening to something else. That's really, really big. Okay. All right. Okay, were there riffs that were common to different blues and British invasion guitarists? This is by Frederick. I guess that they shared the same influences. Yeah, like all these guys listen to all the same people, which is going to be, Howlin' Wolf and Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters, and then they just kind of rocked it out a bit. Albert King, Freddie King, Buddy Guy, all those guys at that point in time, they all started off as blues bands. The Stones started off as a blues band, and there's some great records like Peter. We'll get to Peter Green, who's one of my favorites, and some of those Fleetwood Mac records are just so great. And there's a really common thread between all of them is the old blues stuff. And then they start to kind of do their versions of it. I mean, you listen to Zeppelin's lyrics, you're like Bring It On Home is just basically directly lifted from another song. You're like, wow, guys, really? As a bunch of their first and second records, there's a bunch of songs that you're like, yeah, you didn't write that. But I don't know. Then they started writing their own stuff, which was great. But I started with these guys. And then I went back to people like Howlin' Wolf and everything because they resonated with me more as a player. And then the more modern guys like the metal guys, they all talk about the same stuff. Like Eric Clapton, you hear Eddie Van Halen saying his biggest influence was Eric Clapton. So that you can hear it sometimes. Yeah, and the way he approaches the big picture, like with Cream, where Clapton held it all together, and Eddie kind of held it all together too. Now I'm waxing about nonsense about that. Okay. What year did you start playing guitar, and how many hours a day did you spend playing? I started in 2012. No. I don't remember what year it was, but I was in 7th grade, and I remember. And I always wanted to play guitar long before I played guitar. So it was about 7th grade. I have an older brother who had played guitar as well, so that kind of always kicks your butt into, he does it, I want to play. And he didn't stick with it, unfortunately, but we're getting back to doing some playing together soon, so I'm looking forward to that. And it wasn't until like 8th grade or freshman year of high school that, you start figuring out, like, I could run fast, but I just hated sports. And with all my passion, I hated it. I went to a very sports-oriented high school, and it was just horrible. So I got into guitar, and that was kind of it. And I practiced as much as I possibly could. Then I went to music school. Well, I took some time off, and I played in bands, and then I went to music school. And like in college, man, 5 hours a day. When I got out of college, some points like 8 hours a day. That was pretty. When I could, because I was still living in my mom's basement, so I was allowed to do that. I could do that because then I taught. It was a great time. I learned a lot and also developed some hand problems. That's what happens when you practice 8 hours a day. If I look back at it, I think I probably could have practiced smarter. You don't need to practice 8 hours a day. I think there was just a lot of noodling, which of course helps you develop your style and such, but I think I probably could have used my time more in a concerted way and thought about chord tones like I do now. Okay. Okay, any more questions? All right, so, everybody, we're running on an hour, so once again, let's talk about Jimmy Page. A very common thing that we learned today is a recap. Outlining the sounds of the chords, just on the dominant 7th chord, on the 1 chord especially, if you hit the 3rd of the chord. And so I'm just, that nice kind of repeated idea. Then when I go to my 4 chord, I basically play that. D7, back to A. Then my E chord, E major triad. Here's my 4 chord, it's sort of like a D7 chord. Then I do the C triad. Playing a C triad. Right, so there's that. The picking idea, of course. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. This is, I don't know if I made that clear, guys. I'm sorry, I started talking about that lick. The thing about that lick, the big intro lick of this whole thing, the trick to playing that properly, and I never used to do it right, was this economy picking. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Right, that's the only way you're going to get some speed on that, and that's going to carry through to other things. But that kind of move, and then the A major pentatonic. So the idea of Motivic Development, where you're going to play the same lick twice through 2 different octaves, and then if you like a certain lick that you've heard from this, then, find it all over the place. Right? Or all kind of things that you can repurpose anywhere. And that would be the next thing, is just work on repurposing stuff. All right, so do you have any recommended theory course? I don't have one myself, but I can recommend Jeff Sheets' Street Theory over at TrueFire. It's great. Jeff's a great guy, great instructor. Jeff Sheets' Street Theory, it's probably on sale. I think they always have sales at TrueFire. My sale code will not work for those. They only work for my courses. But once again, or if you go to Jeff Sheets' website, I'm sure you can get it there, and that would be cool for him too. All right, any questions before we wrap it up? Coming this Saturday morning at 11 a.m. will be Andy Wood. We're going to do an interview and a lesson with Andy Wood live. So if you're not familiar with Andy, he is a pretty freaking spectacular guitar player and a really cool guy. So I'm looking forward to talking to him. And I want to thank everybody. Those have been going great. People really dug them. The Robin Ford one went great. Oh, and the week following is going to be Josh Smith, and then the return of Jason Laughlin, because I love the lessons that Jason did, but it was the first one. He was my first guest, and the audio was just a nightmare because I had no idea what I was doing. Just kind of went for it, which is the thing. Just go for it, right? Just even when you're soloing on this stuff, take this track, just go for it and have fun. Just go for it. Okay, so 50% off if you order this course through my website right now in a link that's here in the chat. Thank you, Kyler, for working that out. And thank you for everybody who picked up the course. Thank you for everybody. I saw some stuff in the tip jar. I really appreciate that. Once again, it's just the more the things like this, the more I can focus on doing these kind of lessons, which I really enjoy doing. And I've been really, really overwhelmed by the response from everybody, either by email or the comments. If you want to take lessons, I do teach privately, so you can contact me through my website, Jeff-McErlain Jeff-McErlain.com. Yeah, right. And you can contact me there, and I'll get back to you. Also, I do have my channel launching pretty soon. Some really cool stuff coming up. And yeah, guys, let's see if there's any more final questions. If not, I'm gonna check out. Okay, cool. Background track tab is right there. It's on my British Blues course. Thank you so much to Phil Mingan, as always, for being the moderator. Really appreciate it, and all the great work he does. He makes my life so much easier doing this, because this is just, it would be too difficult to try to do all this. So thanks so much to Phil and everyone else. So I will see you Saturday morning, Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, with Andy Wood. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.